A dictator bombs his own people. Civilians are dying. The world watches. And then a question arises. Should another nation step in militarily to save them? Welcome to the murky world of humanitarian intervention, where war is waged not for conquest, but for morality. But what would one of history's most cold-blooded realists, Niccolò Machiavelli, say about that? Would he approve of going to war to protect others? Or would he scoff at it as naive idealism? Let's unpack this. Welcome to the Unfolding Journey YouTube channel. This is where we explore timeless ideas in a chaotic world, philosophy, politics, ethics, and the gray zones in between. If you like content that challenges assumptions and bridges past to present, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Niccolò Machiavelli, a 16th century Italian diplomat and philosopher, is often misquoted and misunderstood. His most famous work, The Prince, presents a brutally pragmatic guide for rulers on how to maintain power. It's where we get phrases like, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." To Machiavelli, a ruler's main goal wasn't virtue. It was stability, survival, and strength. His philosophy gave birth to what we now call political realism. The idea that moral concerns should not dictate state policy, power does. Humanitarian intervention refers to the use of military force by one or more countries without the consent of the nation affected, to stop human rights violations. Think, NATO's intervention in Kosovo, 1999, to stop ethnic cleansing. U.S. involvement in Libya, 2011, under the responsibility to protect doctrine. These actions are often framed in moral terms. Protecting civilians, preventing genocide, defending democracy. But here's the catch. They're still acts of war. And war, by nature, serves political interests. Which brings us back to Machiavelli. Machiavelli wouldn't ask, is it moral? He'd ask, is it smart? So, would Machiavelli support humanitarian intervention? That depends on a few questions. Small blue diamond 1. Does it serve the state's interest? If intervening boosts a country's power, prestige, or security, Machiavelli might support it. But if it drains resources or weakens the state, forget it. Small blue diamond 2. Is it a cover for power politics? Machiavelli understood that rulers often cloak ambition in morality. So a leader might say, we're helping people, but the real motive could be oil, influence, or geopolitical strategy. To Machiavelli, that's not hypocrisy, it's effective leadership. Machiavelli warned against prolonged conflict and messy occupations. If humanitarian war leads to unstable regimes or endless rebuilding, he'd call it a strategic failure, no matter the intention. So, he might support humanitarian intervention, but only if it protects or enhances national interest, is executed efficiently, avoids moral weakness. Now here's the philosophical rub. Humanitarian intervention is driven by moral idealism, the idea that human rights are universal and that powerful nations have a duty to protect the weak. Machiavelli, however, represents moral realism, the belief that morality must bow to power, pragmatism, and national survival. So when NATO bombs a regime in the name of peace, a realist sees hidden motives, risky ventures, potential blowback. A Machiavellian ruler might say, help them only if helping helps you. This clashes sharply with the liberal internationalist vision behind humanitarian war, which believes in international law, collective action, and moral duty. Let's not paint Machiavelli as entirely cold-blooded. He understood the power of appearances. He wrote, "A prince must seem to be compassionate, faithful, humane, even if he is not." So, a modern Machiavellian leader might support humanitarian intervention if it wins international favor, distracts from domestic problems, boosts the ruler's image. He might even genuinely value order over chaos and see intervention as a path to regional stability. But the driving force would never be morality alone. In short, for Machiavelli, humanitarian war would be a means, not a mission. Contemporary realists echo Machiavelli's skepticism. Thinkers like Hans Morgenthau, Kenneth Waltz, and John Mearsheimer argue that states act in self-interest, not altruism. Military action should always be strategic, not emotional. Intervention risks destabilizing the international order. Mearsheimer, for instance, opposed U.S. intervention in Ukraine, not because Putin was right, but because realism demands restraint. These thinkers argue, trying to do good through war often leads to unintended chaos. And Machiavelli would probably agree. Gaza 2025, an ongoing humanitarian catastrophe. Thousands of civilian casualties amid prolonged conflict between Israel and Hamas. International condemnation, protests, and calls for ceasefires grow louder. Foreign powers are divided. Some provide military aid, others impose sanctions, while many issue statements but avoid deeper involvement. Humanitarian organizations struggle to operate in devastated urban zones. Debates rage over whether external intervention, military, diplomatic, or humanitarian, is justified or wise. Machiavelli's take? He'd likely begin by ignoring the moral outrage and asking, what does intervention gain or cost the intervening state? Let's break it down. If you're a Western power, e.g. US, UK, France, would Machiavelli support military intervention to protect civilians? Unlikely, unless the intervention clearly advances strategic regional interests, e.g., stabilizing energy markets, limiting rival influence like Iran or Russia, demonstrates overwhelming force and a clear endgame, avoids long-term occupation or nation-building, which he'd see as politically dangerous and costly. A vague moral mission would not be enough for Machiavelli. Would he support diplomatic pressure or covert influence? Yes, if it serves to undermine adversaries, enhance regional control, preserve the image of acting on humanitarian grounds, without risking too much. As he wrote, a prince must appear to be virtuous, even if he is not. Machiavelli would favor soft power masked as morality, rather than direct, messy entanglement. If you're a regional actor, e.g. Egypt, Iran, Turkey, would Machiavelli support involvement? Only if the chaos can be leveraged to expand influence, weaken enemies, or stabilize borders. He'd warn these states to calculate carefully. A failed intervention could provoke domestic unrest or military backlash. Remember, never start a war unless you are sure of winning. The key Machiavellian lessons for Gaza, 2025. Humanitarian concern alone is not a justification. Machiavelli would scoff at interventions driven by emotional outrage. He'd say, compassion is a luxury states can't afford unless it strengthens power. Half measures are dangerous. Symbolic strikes, weak sanctions, or inconsistent diplomacy. Machiavelli would call it a display of weakness, encouraging bolder actions by adversaries. Narrative control is everything. Even if an intervention is strategic, Machiavelli would advise leaders to wrap it in righteous language. Protecting civilians, ensuring peace, preventing regional collapse. Not because it's true, but because it's effective. In Gaza 2025, Machiavelli would see a chessboard of clashing interests, not a battlefield of good versus evil. He would ask, what action brings security, control, and strength with minimal risk? And if the answer is none, he'd likely advise, stay out. Watch. Wait. Use words instead of weapons, until the odds shift. Because in his view, moral clarity is irrelevant if it ends in strategic disaster. In a world of 24/7 media and global scrutiny, leaders often feel pressure to do something. But the Machiavellian would caution, don't act out of guilt, act out of calculation. Don't fight wars to feel good, fight to win. Don't confuse virtue signaling with virtu, the strength, decisiveness, and strategy that defines great leadership. So if a modern leader asked Machiavelli, should we intervene to stop a dictator from killing civilians? He might say, only if you're ready to deal with what happens next. The question of humanitarian intervention isn't just political, it's deeply philosophical. It forces us to weigh moral responsibility versus national interest, justice versus pragmatism, idealism versus realism. Machiavelli doesn't give us easy answers, but he gives us a framework. Do what is necessary, but never forget why you do it. If your goal is true peace and stability, sometimes that might mean intervention, but only if you act with clarity, strength, and eyes wide open to the cost. Thanks for joining us on the unfolding journey. If this video helped you see global politics through a new lens, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Like this content? Don't forget to subscribe to The Unfolding Journey for more philosophy, politics, and real-world analysis. New videos every week that challenge what you think you know. Hit the bell to never miss a new upload.